so many women would come to me and say, I've had this idea. I didn't really know how to execute it. And it was scary and risky. And, I don't really have that fear of risk. The model was tough. How do you make a $40 blowout work? But it was a really big question mark, so it was also a really big risk. You kind of have to have the stomach, or the appetite for risk, which I really do. I felt like, if it doesn't work, nobody dies, and I'll just go figure something else out.
Success isn't linear. There's bumps in the road, but there's like those pivotal moments where you could easily quit.
I think that is also like part of what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur. It's just like, you're like, okay, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. So much of it was hard, but none of it ever was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I really always loved it.
Welcome to the She Believed She Could podcast. I'm your host, Allison Walsh. Since 2020, this show has inspired thousands of women around the world to believe in themselves and take bold action toward the lives they're meant to live. Each episode brings you powerful conversations and practical strategies to strengthen your mindset, build your confidence and brand, grow your business, and protect your well-being, all while spotlighting stories of women who are making a difference and changing the world in their own way. I am so glad you're here. Now let's get to work. You're in for a treat today. Alli Webb is a visionary entrepreneur, author, and beauty industry innovator, best known as the founder of Drybar, the category-creating blowout-only salon that revolutionized women's relationship with their hair through elevated branding and customer experience. She is the author of The Messy Truth and the founder of The Messy Collective, a community platform empowering women in entrepreneurship and reinvention. And she's now launching her newest venture, Messy, inspired by her belief that true beauty comes from embracing natural texture and individuality. Alli has appeared as a guest on Shark Tank and has been recognized by Inc., Fast Company, Fortune, Marie Claire, and so many more for her leadership and innovation. She is an absolute treasure and so fun to talk to. So I can't wait to get into our conversation with Alli Webb. Well, Alli, I am absolutely thrilled to have you on the show today. So for those that don't know, would you mind sharing a little bit more about yourself with our audience?
Well, I founded a company called Drybar 16 years ago, which is wild. Sold it in 2020 and have recently launched my newest brand called Messy, which is more about embracing your natural hair, just kind of learning to love the hair you have, which is kind of my whole journey with starting to embrace my natural curl and texture. And I wrote my second book in between selling Drybar and starting Messy, called The Messy Truth, which is very much a tell-all of like the, building and growing and scaling and selling Drybar and everything that came along with that, and the messiness that kind of under the surface that I felt really compelled to talk about publicly. And so, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, I mean, an incredible ride. And so congrats on your success. And I love the fact that you're like doing it again and leaning into meeting a need for individuals that are looking for an alternative and different products. So can we rewind the tape though? Because you started Drybar, like that's a big freaking deal. So, for those that are listening, like, I mean, where did the idea come from? I've heard your story, but I want them to hear it too. And I think it's just incredible. And what you built was so significant and substantial and like truly legendary. So, but it started someplace. So can we go back?
Well, just like any good idea, it really started from personal necessity. I mean, I'm a curly hair girl, and it's ironic that I've started this brand called Messy, which is very much embracing my curls and my, and all that went with that. But, most of my life I was fighting it and more, not even so much fighting it, of just like being really like baffled by it. And so it really was what, prompted me to go to beauty school all those years ago and become a hairstylist. And then, fast forward to, trying to find my personal purpose after having my kids and really like searching for something that made me feel, like that was like satisfying something in me. And so, Drybar kind of came about after I had started a mobile blowout business in LA. And then, I was charging only $40 and it was pretty cheap. And I was like, why isn't there a place, that focuses on just blowouts as someone who, who always wanted that. And I knew that women were figuring it out. It just, there wasn't like a place that was doing it really well. And I mean, I never would have imagined it would turn into, to what it did, and that it would resonate with women the way it did. But, again, like any good business or brand or product, it's always started when there's just something that you want that doesn't exist, and that's exactly what Drybar was, and it was interesting as we grew and, we became more popular, and so many women would come up to me and say, I've had this idea, I didn't really know how to execute it. And it was scary and risky. And, I don't really have that fear of risk, but the model was tough, right? It's like, how do you make a $40 blowout? Actually, we started at $35, work. Whereas traditional hair salons, you charge $100, $150 up to like $600 if you're in LA for color or cut or whatever. And how do you make this $35, per service model work? And I was like, I don't really know. My hope is that we're going to do so much volume, not actual volume.
Unintended.
Yeah, exactly. That it will work. But it was a really big question mark, so it was also a really big risk, which is, you kind of have to have the stomach, or the appetite for risk, which I really do, and I felt like, if it doesn't work, nobody dies, and I'll just go figure something else out, So I think that is also like part of what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur. It's just like, you're like, okay, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, it's okay,
And we have a lot of entrepreneurs, founders that listen to the show, and I think everybody has those different moments in their journey, right? Success isn't linear. There's bumps in the road,
Totally.
But there's like those pivotal moments where you could easily quit. Did you have any of those in your journey where you're just like, I don't know, this kind of sucks now, and I don't know if I want to do it?
There were certainly moments, where things got really hard, and it just was so much work and so overwhelming. And then I was grappling with like the kids, and my kids were so little when we started it, and I wasn't around a lot. And, I remember my son once saying to me, why do you have to keep opening Drybars outside of California? Like, why can't you just open more here so you don't have to like get on planes? It's so sweet.
Those are
like,
hard.
So that part was hard, but not, there was lots of hard, it was so much of it was hard, but none of it ever was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I really always loved it. And it was like, I always say that it was like the dream I had that I didn't know I had, because it was like, we started this thing, my life completely turned upside down in like the best way. And I was, I was also really fortunate to be at the kind of forefront of female entrepreneurs. This is 16 years ago. And so we just like, I feel like when we started, I didn't have a lot of women to go to for advice. And now it's like, it's so great. And I'm really happy and grateful to be one of those women who helps, the women who are coming up. But it really wasn't like that at the time. So I was kind of at the forefront of all of that happening. And so a lot of really cool things were happening, and I got to do so many great things. And so it was all very intoxicating. I mean, I think I worked really hard, and I worked long, and I worked a lot, but and that was like, hard in and of itself, but it was just so cool and awesome. And I remember I used to tell my brother that like it was like, I loved opening email because it was like, what was coming today? I mean, it was really like that. There were so many opportunities coming our way, and we had so much success and so much excitement and such a beloved brand that it was like such a wild ride.
Yeah. No, I mean, so cool too. And I think when you fall in love with building, right? And you love what you do, and there's novelty to it in some ways because every day is different, but yet you're in love with and obsessed with what it is that you're doing. Like, what a gift, right?
Yeah,
like,
what a gift.
And you were such a trailblazer. You still are. And like just doing the thing, right? And like seeing the vision and seeing the potential and going for it and not being afraid to play full out. So you've given a lot of other women the courage to try, and
I mean, I hear that
to
sentiment a lot, and it's always so humbling and amazing. And and I was such a like terrible student and like underachiever and like, what's Alli gonna do with her life? So whenever even I hear people say things like that, I'm like, God, me? I still have that like, wow, so it's and I try to really not take it for granted. And I'm really grateful for the opportunities like this, and and to be able to help other women who are figuring it out for themselves.
Well, you're doing it, and now you're leaning in again with Messy. So,
Yes.
you were speaking on a stage this morning and heard about just being able to pick up the phone and call Sephora and say, I am launching this brand. I would like to be in your stores. And let's talk about relationships too, because I feel like the doors that probably swung open for you because you took care of those relationships and nurtured them, they're there for you now in this round, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it is, and I know, I always am like, I know how that sounds coming out of my mouth when I'm like, oh, I just called Sephora because everybody's trying to get in Sephora, and it's not easy to do. But yeah, we launched Drybar in Sephora when there was only a few hair brands there, and I made those relationships, and it's interesting when I talk about that stuff because like, I have a lot of women who I worked with at Sephora back in the Drybar era who were just like, I just stayed friends with, and we just kind of like we would see each other every once in a while, or we'd DM or text, and I think that it's just nurturing any relationship in your life is so important, whether it's work or personal or whatever it is, and I just just naturally have done that, and see like how important it's been to my journey, like to be able to call Sephora and talk to them about what I want to do, and then vice versa. It's like I get a lot of people who reach out to me who are like, hey, can you help me with this and that, and I do my very best to do that as well. I mean, like relationship building and not burning bridges and is like one of the most important things that you can gift that you can give yourself. I also tell up and coming entrepreneurs or anybody who will listen, like, go to every event that you're invited to, even though you don't want to go and you'd rather be like watching Netflix on your couch. Me too, I get that. But when you go to these events, inevitably, and I have found it over and over again, never fails, you meet somebody, some connection gets made, and you just never know where that leads, and it's really awesome. It's like, if you think about life like a game, it's just like, what's happening now? Like, I really think about it like that. Like, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's next? And there's an excitement I have about that versus a dread or, like there's just something new around every corner that's exciting.
Yeah. And I've always found sometimes it's the moments where it's the things I don't want to go to the most that end up being like the most beautiful, like eye-opening relationship building experience. But I was really grateful. My mom would take me to conferences when I was younger and really showed me the power of like connection and finding the people in the room that you can, build relationships with. And I'll never forget my first real mentor in my life, in my adult life, I met at a conference and I walked up to her and she was a CEO of an organization.
Oh, wow.
And I said, like, you inspire me. I want to be you one day. And like, it took us a little bit of time, but eventually she became my mentor for a decade and just like poured in, but you just never know who you're going to meet and the business that can happen as a result of it. And it's just a beautiful experience.
And it's really so important. I can't think of anything more important than relationships in life, period,
Yeah. If you were to give advice to your younger self, I mean, you've navigated, growing, scaling businesses and you're doing it again. Like, what advice would you give younger Alli?
I mean, I think it's advice that I probably heed now, which is like, I mean, you heard me on stage this morning. I talked about like the difference between me and my brother, and he just tends to be more like a worrier, and I tend to be like, it's all going to work out. Just trust the universe and trust God and just trust, and I do. I really have. I mean, I have a tattoo that says faith, and I really, I have a strong like it's all gonna be okay mentality that I didn't have when I was younger. I did stress a lot more and worry a lot more, and I don't know if it's just honestly came with age and experience, and the fact that I've just been through some really hard shit that you're like. All the worrying and all the stressing doesn't change anything that's happening, So it's like, and I feel like I've seen a lot of these things going around Instagram recently. You probably have too, where it's like, it's like, what if the best thing happens?
Exactly.
Like, it's like, what if you're instead of worrying about all the bad things, you're worrying about all the good things. Like, like
reframing,
flipping that and reframing that, and I think like we also just weren't talking about that stuff, 16 years ago when I started Drybar. I wish we had, because there was like this very like, not to say that there's not grind, like I'm a grinder, I work hard and, I have a sense of pride about that, but I love what I'm doing. So it doesn't feel like work and all that. But I think back in the day in Drybar, I had this like, this like pressure that I put on myself to be like sitting in an office all day and to, and at some point, well into Drybar, I think I was like, you know what? I don't have to do that. Like, I can go work out in the morning, and I can leave early, and I can work from home, you know? And I think, like, you know, all the things that have happened in our lives shape us. And I think COVID really is as bad as that whole thing was. I think there were some gifts, you know, that came from that, like people working remotely. And I still think it's important to have, you know, connection with people. But I think that did kind of give us all permission to, like, you know, my company's spread out all over the US, and I think that's okay. And so, you know,
permission to do it differently, you know, and not be so rigid. I mean, the right room changes everything. Your clarity, your confidence, your revenue trajectory.
The She Believes She Could Summit is a curated, high-impact gathering for women building intentional, scalable platforms.
This isn't a massive conference. It is a strategic room, a room where you finally articulate what you've been trying to say, where you refine your positioning, where you build beyond the algorithm into ownership and sustainable growth.
One powerful, focused day in Orlando. Smart strategy, curated conversations, real momentum.
And for those that are ready to move from clarity to execution, there's a VIP day, the Visibility Lab. It's an intimate guided studio experience where you turn your refined message into professional, high-level brand assets, filmed, produced, and ready to elevate your platform immediately.
Day 1 is clarity. VIP day is execution. May 7th in Orlando.
If you've been craving proximity, strategy, and expansion, this is your room. I think for me, I didn't have a lot of examples in my life growing up of like, how can you do it different? It was like, nope, corporate path, like this is what it's going to be. Yes. Yeah. And so I had to like seek out other ways of doing things and just exposure. And like, how else can you create a life and a business that you love and that, you know, serves you in so many different ways, and it gives you the opportunity to do the things that you want to do. So the way you want to do them. Well, I am just so grateful that we've had time today. I would love to wrap up our conversation by asking a couple questions that we love to ask our guests. Okay. So in the spirit of She Believes She Could, what does that mean to you?
I guess, you know, I think of it as like, and interestingly, I used to always say, especially because I didn't go to college and I don't have like, you know, the pedigree to do essentially what I've done. I always say, like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. You know, and that's what that kind of makes me think of. You know, it's like everybody's capable of pretty much everything. I mean, I'm never going to be like a pro athlete, but you know, there are things within my reach, and so I think there is a like, when I hear that, you know, I think of like, like you can really do anything you want to do, which I know sounds lofty and we've heard it a million times, but there's like, but I think the only like, you know, caveat, I guess, to that is like, you don't know where that dream's going to lead you, you know, and it's like, you know, to have ended up where I've ended up in my life is not where I thought I would end up, you know, or at this point in my life. So, you know, just having a real belief in yourself, I think is the key.
And being willing to do the work too. I think that's super important as well, but it all starts within for sure.
Yeah, it really does. Because the work doesn't feel like work. When you really love what you're doing, at least not my experience.
Yes.
You know, it's like work.
Yeah. And that's a common theme from the amazing women I've had the chance to spend time with and share space with.
And what a gift.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, if you can set up your life in a way that you actually like what you're doing every day, like
you're winning.
You're completely winning.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people can't say that, unfortunately. And I wish that for them.
And I always like encourage people, like even today at the end of my talk, when she asked me like, what advice would you give everybody? I'm like, that thing that you're scared of doing or you're embarrassed to talk about or whatever, go do that. You know, and it's like, you know, if it takes a year of you saving up money to be able to go do that, like plan it out, you know, go do the thing.
Yep.
Because we get like one very short life. Like, go do it.
Shoot your shot. Yeah. Go for it. Well, I love that. And then who do you look up to? Who are you inspired by? Is there somebody that we should be following, listening to, reading? Is there any source of wisdom that's really top of mind?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it kind of like, you know, I feel like there's different women at different times. You know, I think it was like, I mean, Brene Brown is one of my favorites. I'm an old school Oprah lover.
Me
for
too.
Sure. You know, I mean, I feel like Katie Couric said something recently that I thought was so profound about, you know, just like, you know, not taking relationships for granted. But, and then I have a lot of like friends in the entrepreneurial space, watching like what Whitney Wolf has done. Rebecca Minkoff's a good friend. She's, also such a trailblazer. There's just so many. Candace Nelson. I'm just like going through all like my female founder friends, who are doing great things. And I've been really lucky. I mean, I don't live in LA anymore, but I did for the last 20 years and been surrounded by women, and just, my feed is mostly female entrepreneurs who are just doing cool shit all the time. So
I love that.
I'm constantly like inspired by, by other women. And then even by the less well-known women out there who are, trying to figure it out and in the grind right now. It's all very inspiring to
It
me.
is. I just love to see women going for it.
Yeah.
There's something
And
about
you just
the
see
energy.
it so much now. It's beautiful.
Well, and to support one another too, and to show up and to be there and to cheer for them on the days that are hard, and to remind them of the value that they bring to this world, and to keep going. So I love that. But thank you so much. What a treat to have you on the show. And thank you. And we love what you're doing. We'll continue to support you, and just thank you so much for the gifts that you give to this world.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I am so grateful that you are here. As always, please continue the conversation over on Instagram at Allison Walsh, and make sure that you check out all of our freebies. If you scan the QR code, if you're watching on YouTube, or check out the link in the show notes, it will take you to a page full of resources and trainings and things to help you go farther, faster. And that is always my intention, is to help you continue to grow. And as always, I believe in you 1000%. And my goal is that you do too. Take care, beautiful. I'll see you next time.